Look, I either upload regularly or I don't get sick. One or the other. It's just the way it is. I'm just a messenger. Hello there. Welcome back to the channel, where today we're reviewing Godzilla vs Biollante. Or T, I don't know. I went into this movie with high expectations, and while not entirely met, I can confirm it is a banger. And Bio Wars is the only song I will be listening to in 2026. I also had my expectations subverted with this review, as I didn't want to make another massive video, and I felt that I didn't have anything noteworthy to say about this film. Then something clicked, and this video took me 2 straight weeks to write and edit. So yeah, let's just get through this, because I have a lot to say. Enjoy. Before we get into the plot, I think it'll be easier if I explain all the main players beforehand. Dr. Shirogami, or the Doctor of this movie, is an extremely advanced genetic scientist, and has a daughter named Erika. Another scientist, Asuku, has a student called Miki who can talk to plants. And Asuku is dating another young doctor named Kirishima, and her father is the CEO of a genetic research foundation. Gondo is one of Kirishima's friends, as well as a colonel. Godzilla was sentenced to timeout at the end of the last film, using a dormant volcano to encase him in lava. The movie starts right where the last one left off, with a news reporter covering Godzilla's attack. I do love it when movies link together in the intro, or rather, we get to see a different perspective or the aftermath. A cleanup member finds a chunk of Godzilla's hide amongst the rubble, and hands it to what appears to be American military personnel. However, it's quickly revealed that they're not affiliated with Japan, as when officials find them, they quickly escape with some funky jazz. Reusing the tension theme of the classic score, oh my goodness. Rewind the footage. It doesn't appear as though he got replaced with a dummy or was pulled away by a harness. I think they genuinely blew up that poor cast member for this movie. Before the group can escape, John Wick, sporting his iconic man bun, stops them and steals the sample. At the Republic of Saradia, the Doctor leaves in the middle of the night with his daughter to freeze the recently arrived Godzilla cells. When they get to the Institute of Biotechnology in the morning, the leader of Saradia talks about looking into ways to transform the desert. He mentions a new weed that can grow in the harshest landscapes, and that if they were able to mix it with Godzilla's regenerative cells, they would be able to grow it exponentially. An explosion rocks the Institute as the cells are stolen, and Eriko passes away next to a red rose. 5 years later, and while talking to the plant psychic Asuku to figure out what the rose would say, the Doctor is spied on by both the Americans and John Wick from the start of the film. Yes, I'm going to be referring to him by that for the rest of the review. He's only ever called the Saradia agent, and the guy from Fortnite is canon to the other guy from Fortnite. Violent tremors occur at Mount Mahara, and in a terrifying twist, all of the children at a nearby school had the same dream. Miki also sensed Godzilla as a new weapon is mentioned, an anti-nuclear biomatter. It's a bacteria that eats radioactive materials, and it would be possible to create with a sample of Godzilla's DNA. You might recall how he now eats radiation. So if they get one of the enzymes in his digestive system, or the bacteria that break it down, they can effectively create a way to remove nuclear materials without side effects. The Doctor refuses to help them as he vowed to never meddle with those cells again, and for good reason, as the head of the company is only focused on how much the nations of the world would be willing to pay for such a resource. The Doctor is analysing the plant that was near Eriko in her final moments, and finds out that it is dying, and so helps the company leader on the condition that he can keep the Godzilla cells in his lab for 7 days. The Doctor then does his thing, analysing the specimens like that one guy from Toy Story 2, before he manages to combine them, which quickly mutates the rose. Godzilla starts moving in response to it, but thankfully, the second Super X, the Super X2, the successor to the first Super X, which was the Super X1, has been completed. It's got a variety of upgrades, as it's now twice as durable, submersible, and features a fire mirror made out of synthetic diamonds. If Godzilla were to use his atomic breath on it, it would return Sorry, old reference. It would return his atomic breath back 1,000-fold. The plant is exponentially duplicating, and in a single day, one cell would turn into 4 million. Miki draws a picture of a massive plant, subtle foreshadowing, and the Americans demand the data or they will trigger an eruption in Mount Mihara, destroying it completely and releasing Godzilla. Remember kids, eruptions giveth and eruptions taketh away. A giant rose emerges at the lake, of course being the Doctor's attempt at an immortal plant, and they name it Biollante after Norse mythology. As Miki senses Erika's spirit from within it, Kirishima walks away in disgust, before accepting the blackmail and handing over the cells. However, John Wick interrupts the transaction by stealing the cells, and so the Americans explode the mountain, releasing Godzilla. He of course heads towards Tokyo, fighting the Navy along the way before the Super X2 is launched. The fire mirror works like a charm as Japan closes its airports to prevent the stolen bacteria leaving the country, using Godzilla's sudden appearance as a cover-up. Biollante has now lost Erika's spirit, being just a Godzilla plant hybrid as she calls out to Godzilla, who appears at the coast, making a beeline for Biollante. Get it? 'Cause bees, plants, beelines? Never mind. Godzilla emerges victorious from the following fight, turning Biollante into glowing dust before heading towards a nuclear power plant. Kirishima and Gonzo... If you don't believe me, ask the chicken. Sorry. Kirishima and Gondo head over to this Iridia oil company and announce themselves. They then proceed to peacefully retrieve the bacteria. This gets the owner of the company to make John Wick's next target be the Doctor, and when he opens the blinds, he finds out that the weather forecast wasn't entirely accurate. Hate it when that happens. It was indeed Godzilla, and he proceeds to go to town on the town. At one point, he just explicitly turns towards the camera like he's on Disney Channel or something. In case you can't tell, I am rather enjoying this one. The Super X2 electric boogaloo is launched again and promptly crashes, moving Godzilla into position for Gondo and his bazooka team to shoot the bacteria at him. Godzilla is injured but sneaks up on Gondo, who shoots a missile directly into his mouth before the building falls down. Turns out that Godzilla's body temperature is too low, so the bacteria work too slow for it to be lethal. To counteract this, they plan to use a new technology known as the M6000 TC system. It creates thunderbolts and then heat, acting like a giant microwave oven. As Miki draws a picture of a rose in space, Godzilla shows up at the trap and the bacteria starts to work as intended. He somehow keeps going until the glowing dust returns from the clouds, summoning Biollante, who now looks more crocodile warthog than Beauty and the Beast. A mere glance at this creature will be enough to make anybody with hay fever drop dead on the spot. She actually starts running towards him with more screen shake than a found footage movie, infecting him with some additional bacteria during their battle. This works a charm, causing him to fall face first into the ocean as it finally fully takes effect. The CEO demands that they start extracting the biomatter from him, but the Doctor refuses, saying, Biollante starts to vaporize again, and we see Erika in the ashes, telling Miki and the others, thank you. However, after spending one last moment with his daughter, John Wick gets the Doctor, and the chase is on. After a tumble and a brawl, John Wick gets an advantage, but the Colonel activates the lightning trap, vaporizing him instantly. Their worries aren't all over yet, because Godzilla returns due to the water lowering his temperature. But instead of attacking anything, he just plods on back to sea as the others watch. I do wonder what Godzilla spends all his time doing in between these movies. Okay. Yep, curiosity sated. The final shot shows Biollante's final form, a rose in orbit, with Erika finally being free of being a half Godzilla hybrid. What a happy ending. Wait, she turns into Space Godzilla? Okay, change of pace this time around, because instead of starting with the Godzilla design, we're going straight to the music. Biowars is my favourite part of this movie. Call that a stretch, but while I won't be watching this movie on repeat, I'll definitely be listening to this track until my ears fall off. It's a perfect upbeat fusion of electric guitar and what I can only describe as 80s synths, with a collection of funky instruments I can't even begin to identify. Be surprised if a single upload from this point on does not include this as background music. And on top of such a good, original arrangement, they then utilised a tension theme in it as well, Chef's Kiss. Genuinely might be my favourite piece of Godzilla music after Magnetism from Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. This isn't even the main theme, it only appears, what, twice? They did not need to cook this hard for a chase sequence, but I'm so glad they did. Desktop users, it's right here, check it out ASAP. For everyone else, it's at the end of the vid and in the description. Okay, now let's talk about Godzilla's design. His body is mostly the same, as the only notable difference is his chest jutting out more and his legs getting wider. But they completely overhauled his face. His head is a lot flatter, with the profile looking way smoother, and his forehead lumps have been neatly shaped into these frill-like... okay, I have no idea what to call these, but they look cool. His eyebrows have been smoothed down again to really up the menace present in him. His eyes are a blood red with bright yellow irises, and his cheeks have been given more definition, combining with the ears to give him a more feline expression. His teeth are more prevalent, the row is really distinct all throughout his overbite, and his jaw is flatter as well. It's easy to see why this is the representation most cameos lean towards, and my personal favourite. If you disagree, don't feel too bad, just remember that my opinion online is superior to all others, and people need to be reminded of that all the time. Educating people on Reddit is how a healthy person should start every single day. It certainly lifts my spirits up. Okay, I'm joking. I wouldn't ever do that. Mainly because I don't use Reddit. This movie, and its sequel, have a lot less Japanese voice acting, most of which being a bit naff. I'm kinda glad that I don't understand Japanese, because I'd enjoy the movies a lot less if I knew that the voice actors were of this quality.
Enemy plane, sir?
Impossible. No plane can fly that fast.
He's right. Nice shot!
The movie's main theme is of course about the dangers surrounding genetic research, and I have to assume that this was a big deal back in the early 90s, because Jurassic Park released only 4 years later in 93. This had no impact on Godzilla's reinterpretation in the West whatsoever, and yes, my knowledge on each decade only extends to the movies, comic books, and music released at that time. Moving on from my sad ignorance, this seems handled pretty well all things considered. Having two rival nations desperately trying to get their hands on a dangerous weapon, just so the other doesn't, is a tried and tested recipe, and while I'd prefer for it to be a bit more subtle, it's not exactly shoehorned in. Biollante is, of course, an analogy for genetic warfare, showcasing the dangerous potential of such a powerful science, and how, if twisted, it can lead to an uncontrollable disaster. Everyone is so desperate to get their hands on the nuclear bacteria, with the hopes that it could wipe out any consequences surrounding nuclear research, and the exploitation of the Doctor's noble, yet not entirely selfless experiments creates a threat that outclasses even the possibilities surrounding furthering nuclear power. Yes, Godzilla is first and foremost a physical representation of the devastation nuclear weapons bring, but one aspect of the original is how it could very well cease to be science fiction if nuclear experiments continued. Biollante's design and very origin reflects that as well, with the Doctor's insatiable curiosity leading him to mutate an ordinary rose into a brand new creation, but it quickly backfires and grows out of control, turning into an abomination capable of destruction previously unimaginable. Her design bears that classic trope of a creature mutating to such an excessive degree that it backfires, with her rows of teeth extending all the way into her throat and out of her mouth. I also really like the Venus flytrap tentacles, as they help her silhouette stand out, and the dorsal plates present in a few shots, again resembling genetic manipulation combined with the thirst for dominance brought by nuclear weapons. Biollante's suit has been predicted to be the most expensive kaiju suit of all time, which did not pay off for Toho. Yeah, so this film was not successful at the box office, and that led Toho to retread old ground for its sequels in the hope of bringing back people who grew up with the Showa era. Now I went into this movie with all the praise it received for being incredibly emotional and tragic from a variety of sources, but Terror of Mechagodzilla did it better. Maybe there's an element in this film that I missed, overlooked, or simply forgot about. I'm not well known for my memory. But the main emotional core, and especially the ending, could have been executed better. Now, this is again about expectations, because that's what affects the movie the most. I've gone into previous movies expecting to hate them, but I was able to find redeemable aspects that were often overlooked amongst the backlash, and now it seems almost the reverse has happened, with some of the bad aspects of this film sticking out like a sore thumb. Don't get me wrong, this movie is a lot more emotional than Return of Godzilla and most of the Showa movies, but Terror just did it better. Both had a doctor affected by a kaiju, which then caused their daughters to be hurt, leading them to become a shell of their former self. Then, the daughters are twisted into an imitation of Goji before both pass away for good. But in Terror, it's made abundantly clear that it's the Doctor's fault and that he's being manipulated, whereas Erika's death was out of Shirogami's hands. The only real problem with Terror is that the Doctor kinda just dies due to the aliens once again manipulating him, where it might have been better if he sacrificed himself to save his daughter. But that's not even worse in this movie. one tender moment with his daughter, get him to enforce the main message of the movie, and boom, he's shot. I'm no filmmaker, but I can tell it could have been executed better, even if they're given a limited time. I just want to make it abundantly clear that my nitpicking isn't from a place of hate. I'm not upset that this movie isn't as tragic as I expected, and I'm trying to bring it down as a result. And I've not got a signature look of superiority, believing that I could have done better than the filmmakers. I'm nowhere near as talented to make something as good as this. I'm a silly internet guy who listens to themselves talking for hours on end as a hobby. I don't make the best decisions. While I'm being a stick in the mud, I guess I'll mention the unfortunate part of Biollante, that being she barely appears in it. I would go further to say that she should have been portrayed in a more negative light, as the successor to nuclear warfare and not the solution. But that's kinda imposing my own interpretation on this film, then being upset that it doesn't match that one-to-one. But yeah, after Biollante dies for the first time in her rose form, Godzilla has a rampage for the next 30 minutes, making Bio seem like a footnote in her own movie. Again, all nitpicks because I have no other negative notes in this film. It's just so close to perfection. Maybe even being the second best Godzilla movie after Bira, of course, that I can't help but wonder what could have been. What if Biollante defeats Godzilla, only for them to realise that she is a far greater threat, and thus lead her to the trap to destroy her? What if instead of just wiping out the Doctor and dying in the trap, John Wick maybe took him to use his knowledge on genetic research, and then held him hostage next to Biollante? Then the Doctor could sacrifice himself by telling them to activate the weapon, destroying Biollante and the genetic research that creates her in one fell swoop that harkens back to Dr. Serizawa's sacrifice in the very first movie. But yeah, the ending doesn't ruin the movie, and I don't hate it due to my expectations going into it. In case you can't tell already, I greatly prefer to express my positive feelings on the subject, because it's much easier to provide ample reasoning than my negative ones. And with time, I can forgive pretty much any movie. For me to dislike one, it had to be absolutely unbearably insufferable. Naming no names, but that's for a different review. Also, that emotional story is one of the only things going for Terra, whereas Biollante seems more spread out, taking a few key aspects and amplifying them. Now, about Godzilla having a solo segment midway in this film, it's one of the best destruction sequences, I can't lie. It reminds me a lot of Godzilla vs. Gigan with the cinematography and human perspectives, and the city has a wonderful layout and abundance of set pieces, which act as real eye candy. The only gripe I have with this is the ending, as it stuck out like a sore thumb on my first watch, and there's not much else to say besides, well, everything else being phenomenal. Especially the Navy battle, I thought that was rather neat. So yeah, I can't recommend this movie enough. It really has a bit of everything, doesn't it? The best Godzilla design with no contest, an incredible co-star and story to match, a wonderfully unique destruction scene, one of the most well-executed messages yet, and an above-average emotional core. Could it have been executed differently? You've watched this far through, I'll let you be the judge of that. As far as I'm aware, any mild complaints could be brushed aside due to the pure quality of this movie. All things considered, this is probably going to be one of my most rewatched movies, and don't be surprised if it places extremely high on my eventual ranking. In fact, spoilers for a decade's time when I finally finish all these films, but right now it's at my number 2 spot. Will be top dog, but as far as I can remember, Giant Condor does not make an appearance, so it still just can't be a Bira Horror of the Deep. But anyways, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching this far through, I really do appreciate it and it helps out a lot more than it might seem to. Apologies for my terrible voice in this. I genuinely don't know how I'm going to top these last 3 videos for my Godzilla vs King Ghidorah review, but at the very least that one should be a lot shorter. Right? Hopefully. Anyway, have a wonderful day and I'll see you all later. It involves the same time travel logic as Avengers Endgame. I'm going to have to somehow make an explanation for that. Are you kidding?